Hey, good morning, guys. Welcome back to the Rod Shop. I'm Captain Lee, and this is round 2 of NFC and building of a blank. So, just to catch you up, if you haven't watched the previous 2 videos, stop, back up, and go watch them. Because we just came from the cutting room where Miss Cindy was cutting all these complicated patterns, and we're going to where they're going to lay them up, then they're going to tack them to a mandrel, and they're going to roll them, and then they wrap them in cellophane, and then, well, they put a label on them and then send them to the oven. So there's a few things that you see in the video that aren't really clear on the video. So I thought I made some crude models, and we're going to try to explain some things that Alex is talking about that I couldn't get good angles, or the video doesn't translate to exactly what's happening. So here are my cut pieces of carbon fiber, and I've used my crayon to indicate kind of which direction that the fibers are going. This one I was trying to duplicate an X-ray blank. I know it has 5 pieces to it, but it was getting a little too complicated even for my little simple-minded model. Well, let's say you have, one piece of carbon fiber. This is 7 feet long, and it's obviously out of scale. So you have a 7-foot long piece of carbon fiber, and then you may have, you're going to see Eleanor start to stick these together and then pull the backing off. So you would have like a reinforcing layer going in the opposite direction, and then you would have, this is the mag taper, where, this is where you're going to get a soft tip. And then within 1.5 or 2 feet, you're going to get into the power, so you have the extra fast action with still a soft tip. So let's just say this is a mag bass rod we're putting together. We've got, and I'm sorry, Alex, I know this is crude, but it's all I got, man. I'm, redneck. So we've got first layer, second layer reinforcing going the opposite direction. Let's say the third layer, which is the mag bass piece. And you're going to see these pieces here stick out when they go to roll it. And I kind of zoomed in on it so you can see this little tab here sticking out. And then maybe you had a fourth reinforcing layer going the opposite direction. Now this obviously wraps around a mandrel, so Eleanor does this part. It all sticks together. And then she hands it next station. And Mo, let's just say, this is my mandrel. Mo is tacking this down on the mandrel. And then this piece here, where everything touches the mandrel for the first time, right there is the spine. As they roll it around this mandrel, and this was a weirdly shaped mandrel, obviously. Some of theirs were too. There's multiple angles on the mandrel, and you really can't see those at all in the video. But what happens is, as it rolls, and these extra edges roll differently, that's where your other spines come from. So we've got them laid up. We've got them tacked to a mandrel. Then Mo takes one over to the roller. Big Helen was the name of that giant rolling table, and it's called a reverse panel key table. And I really tried to get to where I could see it, but it's not just, the table part is not the bottom. The table is the part that comes down. Now on that part that comes down underneath, there were keys, individual pieces that were about 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches wide, like piano keys almost. And as it came down, Mo adjusted the pressure on every one of those keys. So instead of having a flat piece that came down on a mandrel that has multiple shapes to it, each 1-inch section would adjust so that the pressure was even all the way across it. The other thing you could not really see in the video, later in the video I get on the other side of the Big Helen table, and you could see it kick. One of the things that NFC does differently is the table itself. And say this is the bottom part of the table, and this is the part that's coming down. When it comes down, instead of rolling straight, which everybody else's table does, it actually follows the taper of the part, so it's rolling and putting direct pressure down and not twisting the mandrel and the fibers, the carbon fiber, and getting a twist. Now, what that allows them to do is Gary's designs can be lighter because you don't twist and impart any side pressure on the carbon fiber. You can use less carbon fiber. One of the things Alex mentioned was that one way to compensate for the straight rolling table is they use more fiber. Well, that just makes a rod heavier and less sensitive, in my opinion. So we're going to go through layup. They tag it to the mandrel. They roll it. After they roll it, they had about 30 minutes to get it into the wrapper, which wraps a non-sticky cellophane tape under pressure, holding the carbon fiber pieces in place until they get it into the oven to where they bake it together and it becomes one solid piece of carbon fiber. Anyway, if you watched the last video, there's a lot of information there. This one has way more. It's a little bit longer. I did have to edit out some information on the pattern sheet because, you know, we don't want to give competition any head start. If they want to figure it out, they can figure it out for themselves. So you see some stuff edited out, but it was just I just blanked it out with FDX stuff. Just I don't want to give away. They didn't hide anything from us, and I'm not trying to hide it from you. I'm trying to hide it from competition. So anyway, here we are in the beginning of the layup process, and Eleanor starts to lay stuff up. So you make sure you stick around and watch that.
It's really hard to find props to bring into production. But Mel looks like she knows it. Hey, 2 hours in the producer? This is the layup portion, and layup means you're essentially putting together a puzzle piece of that pattern that was cut by Miss Vicky before it actually becomes blank. So you can see that there are a couple of different materials here that are becoming that pattern. So those of you that want to take a look, here's that fiber that's running in that opposite direction that was incredibly difficult to peel off that roll. And this is what provides that blank with hoop strength. So this is an example, and if, is Lee here, is he filming? Perfect. This is an example of a scrimless blank. So there's no glass scrim here. This is one of our
9810.
This is one of our X-ray blanks. And this blank has fiber that's going in this direction as a bias. It's got a reinforcing pattern that's reinforcing the butt section. You see that that bias is reinforced all the way to the tip. So as that material has been cut, what Eleanor is doing is she's very carefully taking off that backing, and she makes it look easy. I mean, it's how many of you tried to peel that material off? It's.
How do you line it down the center line of the mandrel?
Oh, that's the next. You're ahead of me. And the one thing that you just touched on, that is where the spine is born. So that edge that Mo is giving that pattern right now with an iron, so that mandrel has been dipped in some resin, so it's a little sticky. As that pattern moves over, and what she's doing is a process called tacking. So she'll take an edge of it, and she'll just tack it straight down there. That is your spine. So as material rolls around that mandrel, as it's being rolled on the rolling machine behind you, that seam on the inside is that prominent spine that you're feeling for when you're looking for it. Now the minor spine, the secondary spine, is the leftover seam where it ends. That's why it's never as prominent and never as strong. But the primary one is that seam right there is the layers on the mantle. More layers, more prominent of a spine. Yeah.
Feel it and touch it. I'll redo it. I don't mind.
Where do you get your
Sir,
third?
you break, you buy.
Sometimes there are three. Where does that third prominent spine
So the third prominent spine is an example of a third pattern that would be sticking out. So for example, Gary designs all of his patterns to have 1 or 2 spines, but in some cases, you may have a third piece that sticks out, and that is going to be a third. Thank you. Yeah. And that is going to be what happened. Now, this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 piece pattern. It's an incredibly complicated pattern. And you can see that some of the fiber is going this way some of the fiber is going this way. There's a section that's reinforced, and there's a couple more. And this went from cutting, and Dave, the gentleman with the beard, did the cutting portion, so he signed off. As soon as Eleanor moves it to Mo, it'll get signed off that she did the layup. She'll sign off, hey, I had an issue here, or this was hard, or the temperature was off. And as a traveler moves from station to station to station to station, it'll get signed off by one person, by the next person, by the next, by the next, by the next. And Eleanor is working on a group of 126. And just, if you look behind you, the patterns that have been cut, that have been stacked, just to give you an idea of, both the volume and the amount of cutting that happens, that's getting ready to be cut on Monday, on Tuesday, Wednesday, and that process never stops. I mean, we have 3 cells, one cell, a second one, and a third one out there that are constantly running parts, just because it's fucking speeds the machine. And she's not even looking at any tears, like I'm not here. She's just like, I'm just here.
So there's some guide to align that. What's the very much a knack she has to develop?
So there's not a position on. Is this a mandrel that you're marking red, white?
No.
Okay, so there are mandrels where it's critical to have it at a 0 degree orientation, and in that case, they're actually marked with a wax pencil, red, white, where the orientation is. This is not one of those patterns. So this one is just straight down the middle.
But what I would do is I would just put a little line right at the bottom here, roll it, bring it back, and then I would make sure that this line is on the opposite side of what I'm going to tack.
How long to train somebody to do it?
Oh, listen, we know where all of them live. We beat them in, and the only way to leave is death. They're never allowed to go.
You don't see the invisible chain, but it's there. It's there. It's there.
Okay. You're welcome to pass it over here. Don't worry about bending it just a little bit. It's okay, and we'll go to rolling next. Any questions on the spine layup process? Anybody want to try the layup? Actually, no, we won't even offer it. Okay, let's go to the rolling portion of it. And again, file in as much as you can here. That way you can see. And we'll do this a couple of times. So I'm gonna have you stop for a second.
Okay.
Just
I still have to set the pressure too.
no problem. And I do want to remind you guys that this is a Saturday. We're running with a very dedicated, awesome, amazing crew that's normally not working on Saturdays.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was wondering that. Thank you.
We want to make sure that they have some semblance of a work, but no, we don't. We don't care. Okay, so Gary's genius is the following. This is Big Rolling Helen, and you'll never see a machine like this outside of our factory. We've got a couple of them and working on a third. It's a reverse piano key table, and you'll see these dials change as I go through. And the reason why it's this way is this actually adjusts to the taper of the mandrel. So you can see that the mandrel starts off at a thicker diameter and goes all the way to the tip and gets really, really small. On a normal rolling table or a standard rolling table, it's a flat top that presses the part, and then the table is what forces that part to roll. Ours are designed backwards. It's the part that rolls the table. So you'll see the tabletop come down.
So they don't have even pressure?
Nope. So I'll adjust that. So you'll see the tabletop come down, and Mo is adjusting the pressure. Again, to her traveler, it tells her what to adjust at the butt, what to adjust at the heel.
You can see it.
Yep. So as it will start to roll, you'll see that the back end of the table will kick and follow the taper of the part, because the butt mandrel is bigger diameter than the tip, so it's got to do. You see that? You see how that tipped over and winched? All right, it's the part that's driving that tabletop under a lot of pressure. So normally you'd have a tabletop that will come down and force that part to roll. Here it's the reverse. It's the part and the taper of the part that actually causes that table to kick.
Why is the reverse that?
So if you're forcing the part to do something, you're twisting the fiber. So you're imparting some action to the fiber that wasn't designed to be there. Here it's natural, where you're doing what you want that fiber to do.
Is that what Gary was talking about last night, where it would spin and tear?
Absolutely. So normally it's a scissoring action where it'll force that fiber to do something. So what happens is other manufacturers have to compensate by adding either more material layers to compensate for the tear, or not make a part that's really so light as crisp. Or again, this is 250 pounds of PSI. Mo, is this 250 and 250?
It's 350 and 300.
350 and 300, just to give you an idea. That's a lot of pressure to exert on a part as it's being rolled.
And that's why we put powder.
Yeah, so this is a Teflon top, and you've got talcum powder, and the reason why it's under so much pressure, we just can't stand the chance that that part is going to twist that fiber in any way. And it's going to, if it catches, it's a scrap part. All the effort of laying up, cutting, tacking is wasted on this portion of the rolling table.
So we've got, when she's rolled it, we've got some pieces that are sticking out further. Is that part of the taper itself?
Yeah, because you can
That's
see in the
actually-
design.
That's
like
actually
right
part of your secondary spine. So
Okay.
this part that's not prominent, and you'll see this right here. So you see this edge that's sticking out right here. You'll be able to see it right there. There's
Yep.
the edge of the pattern. That's your non-prominent spine right there.
Okay.
That is the leftover of the pattern. That is your non-prominent secondary spine.
So why wouldn't, when you're cutting your pattern, why wouldn't you cut it with that disappeared evenly down
It's-
the blank?
Again, so if it rolls all the way perfectly around and stops, you're going to have a part that's too tip heavy.
I got you.
Right?
Okay.
So that's why it's cut towards the back. So that's why you have a kind of a primary, secondary, sometime a tertiary part. So,
sorry.
No, you're
Sorry.
good. Next time, leave that just little,
Okay.
there you go. I can still see that little piece there.
Yep.
So that is the leftover corner of that pattern that will be part of that minor spine right there.
Okay, yep.
Right there.
Gotcha.
Now, as this lays on the table, because of the amount of pressure that's been exerted on it, it'll slowly start to unravel. So we have about 20 minutes, 30 minutes from this process to the next process where we have to constrict it down with cellophane tape so it doesn't continue to unravel before it goes into the oven and bakes. And we'll see that next. Okay, we're gonna go harass Aurora here for a second because if you think, yes,
When she's in there planing that, could someone hit a button and crush her?
Yes. So that's why we have these. And we just, always communication. So it's always like, I have to trust that when I'm rolling, my person isn't just gonna like reach for the blanket at any time. So just making sure that we're communicating and paying attention to our surroundings.
it's only happened once and one finger Cindy retired last year. No, I'm kidding.
I think that'll work as long as everybody likes it.
This is a two-person process.
No, it's always just, usually I'm here, my other cohort out there to, space, but, they will usually put up the tap and then tell us the cellophane, so we kind of work as a team.
Yeah, there's a person at every station that processes. Yeah. Yep.
So we all just work together to try to keep the flow going.
Okay. Now, if you thought that was impressive, who would like to tack this pattern? And again, behind you, smaller parts for multi-piece. Could be an arrow. Could be a conduit tube. Whatever it may be. And if you guys can look over here, those of you that are fly fisher folks, you've got patterns that are cut for fly fishing. Now, here's an example of a fairly simple butt pattern. Now, this is something that could be cut on a Kodak Eastman type of a cutting machine because there's not an aggressive taper here. It's just something that can be cut pretty easily. But it's still a lot faster to cut it by hand when you've got a complicated curve pattern. And again, here, I want you to know that two people worked on this pattern, Vicky and Dave. So there's two different signatures on here of who signed off before it goes off to the next page.
Are your fly rods generally straight tapered?
No. So there, we do have some, but Gary is the king of doing multiple tapers on a mandrel. So most patterns that we have will have multiple tapers. Yeah. But on butt patterns, they're typically a straight taper, but as you get to the midsection and to the tip, they can go a little straight. So as a pattern gets tacked, I just want to show you guys, oh, I'm so sorry. Ferrule section in this case, reinforced with fiber going the opposite direction because we don't want that ferrule section to break as it's either being ferruled or stressed. So you've got a pattern, it's tacked, spine was already created on it, but this little section right here, that's how we reinforce the ferrule on the inside. So you can wrap the outside of a ferrule with thread if you want to, but in our cases, You don't have to, because every single ferrule section is gonna get
So
reinforced on
the
the
next
inside.
section would start getting laid up from here down, so it slides in?
So it'll be on a different mandrel.
On a different
It'll
mandrel.
be on a different mandrel because it'll be a different taper, but yes, it'll typically start, this will get trimmed off in production, but
Right.
they'll measure where it needs to get
Right,
moved
so it
down.
would slide in?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep. Aurora, I'm gonna leave this over here for you, okay? And again, same thing on the fly parts, smaller parts. You'll get a reverse piano key approach. The table is warm, so if you guys want to, touch it, it helps that. It's got lamps on the inside. It's got just a little bit to help that material be malleable, but again, there's a little bit of powder on there with some Teflon because we don't want that to get pressed into the tabletop. We'll watch the rolling here, and then we'll look at the cellophaning process next, which is equally as impressive.
That roller is all out of control.
It does have an automatic setting, but the problem with an automatic setting is there's no substitute for an operator that knows what the hell he's doing that can always adjust the pattern if there's something weird. But you'll see as he's rolling it, he's going down. He's actually checking. There's a rule that 2-stroke minimum. For the boys that want to have a lap. But he's always checking every single time to make sure that something didn't crinkle underneath there. So because it's so easy on some patterns to actually accidentally introduce a little crinkle, and that's a weak spot. So he'll go through once, he'll double check, he'll double check, he'll double check. And you can see those patterns as they're laying on the table. Every time we've been talking, if you look down, it's already starting to unravel. So it's starting to open up. So there's a finite amount of time where you can work with that pattern before you have to move it to the next one.
Whenever you're, you have, let's just say you have 100, 100 like you have.
Yeah.
Do you put a margin of error in there, like say if I'm gonna make 110?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. For us, it's about a 6% error that we put into every single pattern, and right now we're hovering at right about 5. Well, what's our scrap rate, fallout rate on the back?
I would say 5 to 10%, just depends on the pattern, how difficult it is. What do you mean by scrap?
Yeah, just fallout.
Yeah, fallout, yeah, anywhere from 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
It just depends, the more complicated patterns, we get more fallout just because they're more finicky, and then stuff that's really simple, we don't get as much fallout.
And what are you doing right now?
I am doing a 724.
Oh, she's making a pull tab, and that's going to be.
Sorry, I was like, what?
That's going to be important in the next stage as we have to extract that metal mandrel from the part.
Okay.
It's not to damage the overall part. So we
And
would have
that area is gonna get cut?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Yeah, basically it's just the fibers are going this way,
The
so kind of
opposite
like you
direction.
said, the opposite. So all the fibers on this blank are going this way, these are going this way. So when they go to pull it, it gives something to probe up against, because if it didn't, it would just shred. There would be nothing to like pop the part off,
Okay,
if that makes sense. And then these just identify the part. So if we were to put these in the oven without anything on them, we wouldn't know what they were, right? So I mean, you have hundreds of blanks in there, so without this little identification number, we don't know what it is.
And is that the model number, or is that,
That's the SKU number.
that's the SKU
So
number?
we use SKU numbers over here, and then once they go to the other side, over to the shipping and receiving and rod building side, then they get their model number
Right.
and the decal.
So
But
what SKU is that? Is that the 84?
This is 724. I'm not sure what model
Oh,
that
okay.
is, but it's a
10386, no, 81350.
No, the SKU or the
Yeah.
model? The SKU is 724.
Okay,
I don't know what the model would be, but
that's a spin jig 762.
see, he knows. I know these. That's all I know. So yeah, and then once they strip them and do that whole process, then this will eventually get cut off, and then probably get identified another way. So it's just for our process to know what it is.
Perfect. So we'll watch Aurora do a couple of rolls on some tips, and then we'll go and go through the solve. So funny story. Yes, but he got it back to a lot.
So they don't.
They remastered what they call their own video. But They sold it to a company called Aldala, the meat golf shop. He went into Aldala and they didn't have permission for his release for those tables. And in a lawsuit, they had to buy them back. So it's not like they gave it to him. He paid for them, whatever they paid him for them, but he did get them back.
Here's all the ones.
Yeah. These are original Gary Loomis designed, and you'll see how a table is made. We'll go through our machine shop for a portion of this, and they're laborious. They take time to make through it. Full-time maintenance department, that's what they work on, is just making machinery.
Wow. What about the mandrels? Where do you make those?
Company called Lenco Grinding in California. They're in Bell Gardens. They're the last manufacturer of mandrels off the stateside. They've been doing it for ages. The good thing is SpaceX is one of their larger customers.
Oh, so they're not going anywhere.
So they're not going anywhere. Yeah. Mandrels are expensive. A mandrel is about $400.
Okay.
So when somebody's asking you to invest in the tooling of about 10 mandrels, it's a cost. You get 10,000 cycles out of them, so you can amortize them, and you can take all the deductions on the accounting side. But still, they're very expensive.
10,000 cycles because of the heat?
Yes.
Okay.
Expand, contract, expand, contract. They get pulled on.
Yeah.
They get dropped. They have to get straightened. We have a mandrel straightener just because they go through all that.
You don't have to put any release agents on the.
We do. They get waxed and they have a mold release that gets applied to them. And we'll go through that in the next room. Very important, a very good question. If you don't put a release on, what will happen is that part won't pull. So you actually have to physically cut it off because the metal will not release from it. And you have to pull the parts when they're warm. You can't pull them when they're cold. That's a really good way to damage the mandrel. And if it gets stuck, you'll eventually, you can lose the tip. Because that resin, even though, it's not very resin rich, you'll see that a little portion of it will start to leak out as we go through the next process. And I just want you guys to see that even though we've rolled this under immense pressure, again, sorry, you can see that it slowly starts to unravel. Like we've got a limited amount of time, even though before it fully unravels, so it has to go onto a cellophane machine next. So we'll go to the cellophane process next. So follow me again right around to that original area, and we'll watch how cellophane tape gets applied and where those ridges come from on the blade. Thank you. Now he makes it look easy, but what's happening is we're applying a cellophane tape to the outline of that handle to keep it nice and tight as it goes into the oven to bake so it doesn't unravel further. So it's been rolled.
And it's got a sticky side when you say tape?
No sticky side?
It's just,
Yep.
okay, shrink wrap basically.
Yep. In some cases, it'll get wrapped clockwise and counterclockwise, depending on the part and how much torque it can take. All right, now somebody had a question earlier about having a bump sometime on a blank. So normally what happens if there's a power surge, or the cellophane tape may break, or cellophane tape may have weakness, sometimes it's not consistent because it's got tension and pressure, it may blow out in some cases, and that's what will give you a bump in the blank. So we're supposed to catch that, but in some cases it doesn't get caught. Either it's too hard to see or somebody just didn't pay attention.
So this is where the NFC ridges come
Where
from?
that resin
Correct.
squeezes out.
Correct. So it'll go into the oven, and as it'll bake, you'll have the resin come out, and that's what. And it's not a lot of resin. It's a very fine amount of resin because of the amount of pressure that we put on there. But those ridges that you see are the remnants of the resin.
That's the famous NFC ridges?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So the breaks due to a lack of resin.
Correct. Correct. Yep. So those ridges that you'll see on the blank, that'll get put on by the actual
Does it
cellophane.
burn out? Does it, or is it just-
Yeah, we'll see that. Yeah, we'll see that in the next process. Now you can see here in some cases, here's the edge of that minor pattern. I don't know if you can see that right there. So that's your secondary spine. I mean, you'll be able to follow that depending on how that pattern was designed. So the primary one is on the inside,
Right.
and the reason why you feel the prominent one is because it's got one, it's straight all the way through, but then it's got all those rolls around it. So you're feeling for that first spine that you created.
So the ridges, that's just edge of tape, as it's rolling around, you
Yep.
have a little bit of a bump. So the resin's actually coming out of the material and filling
Correct.
out a little bit of
And we'll
that?
see that in the
Okay.
next process too. Yeah, so you get a little,
Just a little bit of that.
If your tape breaks, you still tape off.
Yeah, gotta do all of Yep. These right here. Oh, yeah, that, so it starts to unravel. So that'll get re-rolled up as it goes through the cellophane process, like that.
So it has to be more continuous cellophane.
Yep. Now we make it just a bunch of different processes, so we sand them off, and we'll see that in the next stage how they get sanded off. All right, we'll keep walking. Just because I want to be very mindful of people. Tell me you're wrong. The same thing happens on this side. The other thing that's different about this factory than any other ones that you'll see is in our case, it's the part that travels. Every other CDI machine that you'll see or any composite machine, it's never the part that travels. The part is always stationary and something travels around it. For us, it's always the part that travels through the machine because that gives it constant pressure as the part travels through the machine. And again, they make this look easy. It's not. Yeah. Clean and wax after every single cycle.
Okay, so this is what's on the front of the blanks when we get them. That's where they marked it here.
That'll get cut off and they'll reattach another one to it.
Oh, the
because
same-
that's
the
the
same
full
number.
thing.
Okay.
So this is what they know when it comes out of the oven, what it is, because there's a lot of different materials.
But it'll be the same number after,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna.
So that's it for the layup, rolling and wrapping. Next week we'll go into the room that has the oven and where they pull the mandrels out of the carbon fiber completed blanks. You'll see them cut them to length. You'll see them sand them. There's a bunch of other things that go on. Part 2 is over. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. And we're out.